Hello. Good morning, Internet land. We are coming
Morning.
at you live on 3 out of 4 platforms at the moment, and we will be live on the fourth one any day now.
Instagram.
Instagram is the tortoise, not the hare. Oh, but
That's
here we
true.
are. And so we're live everywhere. Good morning, folks.
Fantastic. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing so well. Thank you. I feel good this morning.
Yeah,
I woke up to something funny
surprisingly.
that I can't really share, but it put me in a joyful mood.
Okay, fair, fair. Okay, well, thanks everybody for being on. Welcome to DIY Wellness, the show for people trying to take personal growth into their own hands. On this show, Brian and I, both certified life coaches, we're exploring different strategies for improving our quality of life and well-being. And in each episode, we like to pick a different method for improving well being in our lives. We explain it, we experiment with it, and we do this so that you can create your own informed opinion about this method and then decide for yourself whether you want to try it out, practice it, or not. Hi, Brian.
Hi.
The question that we like to start out with is, how are you taking personal growth into your own hands? So, Brian, how are you taking personal growth into your own hands right now?
Well, that's a great question. What's happening for me is that I have been taking personal growth into my own hands by really having to practice and exercise the muscle of self-advocacy. And I will tell you, as a recovering people pleaser, that's not a
Mhm.
really fun muscle to have to work out, especially when it's not super strong, right?
It's
So
uncomfortable.
it's very uncomfortable. Yes. So I'm even like, I feel I'm getting hot as I tell you. So working out the muscle of self-advocacy is not an easy thing. It can be very difficult, but that's what's been going on for me lately.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're going to talk about self advocacy today. Brian, what are the main things we're going to try to cover on the topic of self advocacy?
Well, basically, the topic here is how to self-advocate. And so first we're going to describe, what does it mean to self-advocate? What exactly are we talking about when we use these words, self-advocate? What does that mean? And then we're going to get into what it looks like in practice, like the how-to of it all, like how you might notice it in your life, how you might notice the need for it in your life based on how you're feeling, and then how you might go about executing on it. And then lastly, Morgan is going to lead us through a set of questions, very
Mhm.
insightful coaching questions that will evoke your awareness and our awareness about ways in which we might be able to implement self-advocacy more into our lives for the purpose of reducing suffering, adding joy, and flourishing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what is self advocacy? The really simple, tight, concise definition is speaking up for yourself and your interests. But what we really mean is speaking up in ways that help you get your needs met, in ways that help you protect yourself from harm, care for yourself, and possibly even making decisions that reflect your needs and desires. So the key here is that in order to self-advocate, we have to be in touch with what are our needs, what do we want from our lives, what do we like want to create out of our lived experience. And once we have a really clear idea of that, then we can get a little bit of direction on how to self advocate and what to say or what to do to be a self advocate.
So just that small little thing, everybody, of knowing what you want and being clear on your
Yes.
purpose and your fulfillment, just that little tiny thing. Once you have that in place, then self-advocate like gangbusters. So self-awareness, really, it's difficult. It's a lifelong journey, but self-awareness
Yes.
is a
Yes.
big piece of that puzzle. And self-awareness is not the kind of thing where you have to say, I'm not self-aware and now I am self-aware. We all have deeply unconscious reservoirs of BS within us, and we also have aspects of us that are more and more conscious and becoming more and more conscious every day. So as soon as you become self-aware about a need and you notice that need not being met, you can start self-advocating, even if you don't have awareness about a whole bunch of other stuff. So this is not
Mhm.
about being perfect. This is about evolving and growing.
Yeah.
And self-awareness is a journey, a difficult
Yeah.
journey, all in of itself, let alone then advocating once you have the awareness. That's a whole other step on this difficult journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So why would you want to practice the skill or exercise the muscle of self advocacy, even though it's super uncomfortable? Brian, do you want to answer it or do you want me to answer it?
Go for it.
Yeah. So if you exercise this muscle, then you become a person who's more likely to get your needs met. You're more likely to get your needs met. You're more likely to have your life take the shape that you want. Um, and people who who have the skill of self-advocacy are more likely to thrive in all areas of life, whether that be work, school, home, relationships, etc.
Yeah, and part of that thriving comes because you have boundaries and barriers up around what you need, right? So if you need something and you're able to express it, like Morgan just said, you're more likely to get that need met. But when it goes
Yes.
unexpressed, it will lead to other festering things, like some of those uncomfortable emotions like resentment or anger or frustration or loneliness or impatience, whatever the
Mm-hmm.
need is, right? So when you feel those, anything that's like an area of least satisfaction is what we say in the coaching world, that's a sign to you that there might be an unmet need. And sometimes self-advocating is self-advocating within yourself. What do I need? And then meeting my own need. But a lot of
Hmm.
times, more often than not, it's about doing something in the external to figure out exactly how you can get your needs met in three-dimensional reality, which is where the people pleaser in us might rear back up and go, whoa, that's not for me. But actually, it's
Yeah.
for all of us if we want to live in peace and live in thriving.
Yeah. One more thing before we move into the next point, which is sometimes when people hear the word self-advocacy, they think that it means it only has to do with me. It only has to do with how I interact with myself. But self-advocacy starts with you, but it doesn't have to end with you. The self-advocacy piece is just saying something, expressing, bringing my needs and wants into like a verbal or, action form, bringing
Mhm.
it out into the real world so other people can understand and know what you're aiming for. But once you have expressed it in some way, you can use self-advocacy to ask for support. You can use self-advocacy to talk about what's important to you and connect with other people who also agree with that. So don't consider self-advocacy to be something that is just you by yourself. It can be a very interactive and interconnected thing once you do the hard work of verbalizing it at first.
Yeah, exactly. And I have an example of that, which is, as you guys know, if you've been following along with this podcast or with Hot Mess Life Coach previously, you know about my
Mhm.
topsy-turvy up and down roller coaster adventures with my sugar intake. And that's something that I've been working on and off for probably since 2021, maybe. And at one point last year, I went off refined sugar fully. Like I went hard off it. But I live in a house with a 10-year-old and a 6-year-old, as well as my sister and her husband. And so, like, that means there's junk food around. There just is lots and lots of it, especially right now. Like it's Halloween. Like, so when I was giving this up last time, it was right after Christmas. So there was loads of stuff, like, and just temptation bombs everywhere. And so at one point I actually had to gather my family around. They all knew I was trying to get off sugar, but they have habits of being generous and sharing and not wanting the last
Mhm.
XYZ piece of Danish to go to waste. And in my
Mhm.
previous life, I was a garbage disposal for that stuff. So it would be normal for them to ask me, "Oh, do you want the last bit of this? Do you want the rest of that?" Because I would always gobble, gobble, gobble it up and say yes. And so at one point I had to gather them around and say, "Hey, everybody, I'm trying to do this sugar thing. It would be really helpful to me and help support me if you guys would not offer me the last bit of, cookie, cake, candy, whatever, because I'm going to say no, but it's just going to add this needless temptation element to it and make a struggle where there doesn't have to be a struggle. So if you guys can help me, that would be great." And like
Yeah.
with my sister, for example, she would always send me memes of like different junk food things that we could make. And I'd be like, "Oh, yum." So I even had to tell her separately, "Don't send me the sugar memes anymore." Like, you know what I mean? Like therapy memes, fine. Coaching memes, fine. But like sugar
Yeah.
memes, no more. And they did.
Mhm.
Like, of course they did because they love me. And I asked in this like respectful way that was well communicated, that wasn't coming from a place of entitlement in me. Like, you have to do this to support me. It was more like, well, I'm doing the sugar thing, but I could use your support because your support could make it easier. And of course they jump on board
Yeah.
with that. They love me. So that was, but it was difficult because I felt funny being like, "Hey guys, can you stop being generous?" Like, and that's in the end what it amounted to. Like, stop thinking about me kindly by wanting to offer me the last bit of food because it's throwing me off in a way that you don't anticipate or don't know. And that's the key. They couldn't anticipate that and they didn't know that. And they were just trying to be kind. And so I had to communicate it, even though it felt funny
Yeah.
to me to communicate it, so that they could know, oh, actually what he will experience as kindness is us not giving him the last piece of Danish, which is 180 degrees different from what I would have experienced as kindness the day before or the month before.
Mhm.
So communicating it was absolutely necessary in order for them to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, so in the example you gave, like your interests and your needs changed. And that's going to happen for everybody in all of their lives at all different phases. And when that happens, the only way that we can get the people around us on the same page to understand what we want and what we're working towards is to say something about it, which is what Brian did. So Brian just gave us an example of what self-advocacy can look like in practice. I know we have a couple of other examples. Brian, you had one that's kind of poignant or recent in your life that you had to practice self-advocacy multiple times.
Yes, that's true. So I'm in a PhD program right now, and one of my professors literally just like fell off the map. Like, I don't even know. Like, I sent her
Mhm.
email after email that went unreplied to, and then I asked her questions in the classroom, and then I asked her questions on the discussion thread, literally crickets to all of it. And one of the things was like, you gave me feedback on an assignment, but it was vague. And in order for me to implement it, I need some specifics. So I asked her, like, can you point out in my paper where these errors are occurring so I can fix them for the next time? And then she didn't get back to me until the day after the next paper was due. So I was like, well, and she didn't actually give me any of the feedback. She still remained vague. She was like, I'll give you more feedback soon. That's what her email said. And I was like, well, it's too late now because I turned in the next paper and it's going to have all the same
Yeah.
errors as the first one. And so, uh, this went on for like literally 20 days of different things that I needed help with and broken links and all kinds of stuff. So finally I noticed she has her cell phone number in her email signature. I
Mhm.
called her ass up on Tuesday morning, like after all of this. And I was like, hello, it's Brian from research. I'm sure you're familiar with my name, or maybe not, because I don't even know if you read these emails, but I need your
Yeah.
help. And on the call, she was helpful, helpful, but I could feel the reluctance only because I don't know if I'm making an assumption, but I think I felt the reluctance. Like, she just didn't like being called up at 9 in the morning, and she was definitely groggy. Like, she was clearing her throat, and I said, did I wake you up? And she said no, but I think differently. But anyway, by the end of that phone call, she said within the next couple days, she will rectify that there was another situation with lost points on a discussion, and she said she'd rectify it. She didn't. So I actually yesterday had to continue with the self-advocacy and say, hey, just following up one more time about my missing points in the discussion thread and I did the whole thing from my email on 10/27 and then our phone call on 10/29. And then you said this would be resolved by the
Oh, you
first.
laid it
But
out.
yeah, it's not. And now it's the fourth. And so I just wanted to check in. And she wrote back, oh, I'll adjust your points. Thanks for the reminder. Within a day and a half, those points were adjusted. So
Yeah.
I haven't changed her. Like, she still sends these one-line terse emails. Like, that's just going to be her way forever or whatever. But I still got my needs met. And then on that second assignment, she didn't take any points off for the same errors that were in the first assignment because I said to her, like, that doesn't seem fair since I didn't get your feedback in time. So she did all the things I was asking her to do to meet my needs, except
Yeah.
for actually send me a supportive, friendly vibe. But
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a bridge too far for her, I guess. And so hopefully she doesn't watch my YouTube lives.
but but notice how, at least in Brian's story here, he had to advocate for himself over and over
Oh my
again.
God, over and over again.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like sometimes it takes being willing to go through the discomfort of being like the pestering, annoying, like repeating yourself and like
What'd you call me?
pushing. You know what I mean? But like that might be how it feels to some people if you're not regularly feeling justified in advocating for yourself. You may have these feelings that say like, oh, I don't want to bug somebody, I don't want to bother them. Like Brian said that he previously has struggled with, people pleasing. If you struggle with people pleasing, it is very difficult to advocate for yourself and to ask for what you need. But asking for what you need over and over again, sometimes it's the only way that you can get it and the only way that you can be treated like, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Not justifiably, but like
Equitably,
treated
fairly.
fairly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, to put a fine point on this, like, I can tell you guys clearly in this past week and a half to 2 weeks, what was the cost of not self advocating? And then what was the benefit of having done it? Because the cost was
Mhm,
I was in anxiety about all of the ways in which she wasn't getting back to me. And then I
mhm.
became enraged. So then I was angry at this person. You know what I mean? Urgh. And then after I self advocated, even though it took me multiple rounds of it, I now feel a sense of more confidence. I feel more peace. I feel proud of myself because I did the whole thing with kindness. Like I was so like I killed her with kindness. Operative word being killed, not kindness, but I killed her with kindness. And so
Yeah.
like I feel this sense of victory now. Not victory because I got my way, although getting my way it wasn't even my way. It was the fair way. I got the fair
Yeah.
way. But I feel the confidence and ease and peace of having done right by myself, having done what I
Yeah.
know was right for me. And I feel really good about that. And beforehand, I was literally in anxiety and frustration for days, maybe over a
Yeah.
week.
Yeah. Yeah, I think part of the benefit then is that you give yourself an opportunity to resolve something.
Yeah.
And if it goes unresolved, then the anxiety continues.
Yep. And then it can flourish into other things like resentment. In my case, it became anger. Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah, addressing them is so worth it. For all my fellow people pleasers out there, it is so worth it. Say what you need. Say it to your boss. Say it to your wife. Say it to your friends. Just say what you need. The people that love
Yeah.
you and are in a toxic environment are going to respond well to you saying what you need, especially if you do it skillfully from a place of self-awareness. We don't have to scorch the earth here. We're just saying what we need.
Yeah. Yeah. So, another piece of this is that it doesn't always have to be asking for something. It can also be saying no to something. So,
Mhm.
in Brian's case, the example that he was asking for support from his family in that earlier story, and then he was asking for feedback, asking for just acknowledgement, right?
Competence.
you
Low
know,
level competence.
yes, yes, he was asking for those things. So self-advocacy can be asking for something, but it can also be denying or saying no to something, right? So it could look like, oh, hey, like, oh, I'm trying to be healthy, right? And somebody offers it to you and you say no, right?
Mhm.
That that also is a form of self-advocacy. Or if somebody is trying to say like, hey, like we need to go out tonight, blah blah blah, and you're feeling really low energy and you don't want to, and you think that the best thing for you would be to take a break, rest, nap, you know, drink some tea, read a book, whatever, saying, hey, like really what I need right now is this. Really
Yeah.
what I need right now is rest. And it's nothing against you. It's not that I don't want to, go have fun with you, like, and hang out, whatever. But if you recognize that what your needs and desires are different from what other people are asking of you, being the person that is brave enough to say no, that's also self-advocacy.
Yeah, because what this is reminding me of is that self-advocacy is like a sub point under self-love. And so
Yeah.
self-love means that you're being kind to yourself and
Mhm.
in a way that is just really thorough and really gentle and without all of the hoopla that comes along with our cultural programming that says we shouldn't be kind to ourselves. So we really sink below that, we transcend that, and we become self-loving. And in that place of self-loving is born the need and desire to self-advocate, because if you're just going to let your needs go by, then in the end you're not being as kind to yourself as you deserve to be. Let's put it that way, right?
Yeah.
So self-awareness is a key piece to being able to self-advocate correctly, but also having a real visceral sense of your self-worth. And so it's worth noting that, like, and if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't have that yet, actually practicing self-advocacy can help you even with your self-worth. It's a bi-directional thing. It's not like, oh, I need self-love and then I can self-advocate. Becoming good at self-advocacy will help you feel more self-kind. So they go
Hmm.
both ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Brian, do you have anything to say about how to tell when you need to advocate for yourself or when it's a time to advocate for yourself?
Yeah, it's just sort of touched on a little bit before, but to put a fine point on it, it's when you're feeling some kind of way, right? So I was feeling anxious and angry, and like
Mhm.
that's not the natural state of affairs for a human being. We are meant to live in peace, as Martha Beck likes to say. And so when I'm feeling anything outside of the realm of peace, that's the time for me to go in and ask myself some questions. And one of those questions has to do with, is there a need that's not being met that could probably more easily be met if I just speak up, if I just self-advocate,
Mhm.
or even if it might be difficult to have the need met, but it could be met with even a little bit of heavy lifting if I just speak up and I just self-advocate. Like that's that's worth it. So noticing in yourself when you're feeling some kind of way that is not joyful, peaceful, exuberant, enthusiastic, or thriving, and then letting that some kind of way be a clue, a trailhead to say, where could I go from here? What's happening that's causing this? Is it an unmet
Mhm.
need? Is it an unmet need that could be met with a simple self-advocacy?
Yeah. Well, and also in Brian and I's training, because we went through the same, life coach certification process, we learned about how your body will react when something is misaligned with what you want. So you're going to feel usually, either some tightness in your chest or pressure somewhere. Like sometimes you just feel physically worse
Mm-hmm.
when something is happening that you don't like and don't want.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes it's a more, definable emotion like guilt or, fear or frustration or the rage that Brian was experiencing, right, with his professor. Those are all signposts that may be an indicator that there's a need for you to say something,
Mm-hmm.
to advocate for what you want or what you need in that moment.
Yeah, exactly. Or to advocate for your rights, even like this feeling that Mo is talking about. It can be as simple as we say things like, I have to get this off my chest. That's not an accident
Mhm.
of language. It's because there's a somatic experience, a sensation of having something pressing down on your chest. So that might
Yeah,
not come to you as an emotion. You might not be sitting here thinking, well, I'm resentful of my partner, but you need to get something off your chest because you can tell that your chest is
yeah,
heavy, right? Or like the hairs stand on the back of your neck, right? Like things like that. Or I have a gut instinct about this. That gut instinct might actually be a churning feeling of dread in your gut, but you won't have an emotional name to put on all of these feelings. So it's useful to
right.
notice, like, when is it the emotion speaking loudest, but when is it just my body, my sensations speaking the loudest? And those can be heated too because they're even wiser than our emotions.
Yeah, yeah. So in order to kind of help people practice like this muscle of self-advocacy, learning how to do it, I just have a couple questions that we can kind of ask ourselves in a moment where we get one of those signposts, in a moment where our gut gets, tight or twisted or a pain in our neck or something, feeling angry. When these things start to happen, that's the time to kind of start asking yourself some questions to figure out how can I advocate for myself in this moment. So if you start feeling one of those symptoms, right? First thing you want to ask yourself is, what do I need right now? Which is what
Mm.
Brian shared earlier. Or what what do I want out of this moment, out of this interaction? And just sit with that for a moment because you may not know off the cusp. It may not be immediately apparent, but if you're able to identify it, even if it's like a general thing, like, oh, I'm feeling threatened and I want to feel safer, or I want to feel calmer, right? Like, that's a nice graphic, Brian. I wasn't expecting that to pop up.
I totally distracted my co-host over here. I'm trying the new toys in Restream. Sorry, Mo. Carry on.
All good. Okay. So, what do I need right now? What do I want? Giving yourself the opportunity to identify that. Once you have an answer, doesn't matter how complex or clear the answer is, just an answer. And usually allowing your brain to come up with the first thing that comes to your mind is helpful because usually that's what's true for you.
Yes.
Then you can ask yourself, uh, what in this moment could be getting in the way of me getting that need met or getting what I want?
Yeah.
What barriers are there to me getting what I want? And that might help you kind of figure out like what you might need to ask for or what to say to kind of help you get the thing that you're aiming for or desiring. And then third, you can ask yourself, what can I say or do in response to help me fight for what I want for myself in this moment? I know that's a longer question, Brian. What can I say or do? What can I say or do to advocate for what I want in this moment?
Yeah, I shortened it.
Nice. Okay,
Yeah.
forgive us. We're just playing with our tools here.
Yes, we are. But these are beautiful questions, actually. So carry on because this is good.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's okay to start small. It's okay to do this imperfectly. But essentially all we're really trying to do here is figure out like what are my needs and how can I ask for those?
Yeah. And that sounds so easy when we say it here at the end of our show like this. What are my needs? And then ask for them. But in practice, we all
Mhm.
know that that's very difficult because it goes against what we've been taught from a very young age. You do what you're told. You sit quietly in one chair for 7 hours a day, and you only raise your hand when you think you have the right answer. So that
Yeah.
type of teaching and indoctrination that we all went through for at least 12 years, or most of us, and probably the vast majority of us, it teaches us at a deep, deep
Mhm.
level not to self-advocate. So these questions are simple, and yet they're worth slowing down and asking when you're feeling some kind of way. So it feels
Yeah.
simple and it feels obvious, but actually the answer you're going to get will surprise you sometimes. Like Mo said, that zany thought that comes into your head as the first instinct when you ask that question, what's getting in the way or what do I need? That's from your intuition. So heed that. But you have to do this exercise to
Mhm.
get your intuition to be that still small voice that speaks out to you. So do that
Yeah.
so that the voice of culture that tells you, oh, just bite your stiff upper lip, or oh, just let this one thing go, so that that voice can become softer. And the voice that can become louder is the voice that says, no, 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 I deserve to have this need met. No, 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 I
Yeah.
deserve to speak up and get support.
Yeah. Yeah, and by doing this, you're not being a bother, you're not being a pain. What you're actually doing is you are helping prevent future resentment, anger, negative emotions that could damage your relationships, could cause more anxiety for you. You are really you're really by self-advocating protecting your mental and physical well-being
Mm-hmm.
because if we don't self-advocate then it kind of like festers. It we face emotional consequences for not doing that.
Yeah, exactly. So remember this, guys. Self-advocating is a form of kindness, not only to
Mhm.
yourself, but to everyone with whom you're in a relationship.
Yeah.
So keep taking personal growth into your own hands, and we will be back again next week at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time with episode 5 of DIY Wellness. See you all soon. We love
Ooh.
you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.